I would like to say that if Thomas Edison were alive today, he'd be saying, let me out, because he's, of course, 6 feet under. And with no offense to the great man at all, I want to start by talking about the two attributes that had the biggest impact about the way Thomas Edison approached his craft and distinguish it from someone else who was almost a peer. Thomas Edison was an industrialist and a monopolist. An industrialist is somebody who uses resources, systems, factories to figure out how to make something in quantity cheaper than it has been made before. Our standard of living is completely based on the work of industrialists that have come before. The industrial age, the industrial revolution, it lasted our whole lives. And a monopolist, leaving out the whole electrocuting elephants story, is part of what someone like many of you do all day, which is to invent something, get a patent on that thing, and keep other people from making it for a while so that you can profit. Because the mindset of the industrialist and the mindset of the monopolist is that this innovation ought to be rewarded. And if the idea is available to everybody, it's hard to get more than your fair share. At the same time, little quick bit of trivia, when Alexander Graham Bell was popularizing as opposed to inventing the telephone, he thought that he would solve the problem of what you would say when you picked up the receiver, because he was selling to the wealthy, and the wealthy didn't speak until they were introduced to each other by a butler or a trusted third party. He thought people should pick up the phone and say, ahoy, which is what you said when you passed someone on a boat. And it was Thomas Edison who actually explained that that was a ridiculous idea and coined the term hello. That hello, before that, was what you said when you stubbed your toe in mixed company. And he turned it into what you would say when you, that's a total aside, I don't have much time, so I'm going to skip this. Anyway, but Alexander Graham Bell is known to us today and had a huge impact because he was the first important inventor who wasn't an industrialist, he was a connector. And that what the Bell system was a system. And that what you bought when you bought something from Alexander Graham Bell was a 200-page manual that told you how to hook your phone system up to other people's phone systems. And that he and the other people who followed him at AT&T barnstormed around the world selling their protocol for how the systems would all integrate to one another. All of which is a way of describing where we are today. Where we are today is the industrial age is now over. That there are a few shining exceptions, but in general, if you are making something just like somebody else is making something, someone else is going to make it cheaper than you. And if you are making an incremental improvement in a standard industry, leaving Steve's unbelievable story about Tabula to the side here, that incremental improvement isn't enough to make outsized rewards. Because the Industrial Revolution has turned into the Industrial Age, which has turned into a race to the bottom, which has turned into how cheap can we make that thing we made yesterday. There's not a lot of room in that world for breathtaking innovation that changes everything, which we used to see every week in the 1918s, 1920s, whatever. And so we're seeing all this other innovation now, but it's connection innovation. That what the internet has done is created this reprogrammable universe we all live in, where the person who makes a connection is the person who creates value. And not only don't you want your idea to be a secret, you want everyone to know your idea. You want everyone to sign up with your protocol. You want to be the opposite of someone who's keeping it in the back room and secret. You want to figure out how to get more people to know what you're up to. In the old days, if you were a widget maker, if everyone in town came for a free sample, you were in trouble. And if everyone in the country came for a free sample, you were bankrupt. But in the connection world, when you traffic in ideas and protocols and ways for people to understand each other, if everyone in town comes for a free sample, you're doing fine. And if everyone in the world gets a free sample, then you win. Right? And this shift is really fundamental. And some of you work for organizations, are busy trying to invent scarcity when we're seeing that all the people who are winning by playing off abundance. And I'll just, because the Domino project came up, I'll give you the 2-minute version of this. Book publishing industry has, for 500 years, been based on scarcity. Scarce paper, scarce shelf space, scarce opportunity to get your idea in front of people, scarce number of pages in the New York Times book review, and on and on and on. And so if you got your fair share, or more than your fair share, of scarce attention from an editor because you have a good agent, you were more likely to get published, which gave you more than your fair share of shelf space, which gave you more than your fair share of reviews, which gave you more than your fair share of book sales, and then maybe you could make a living at this. And then when digital books show up, when ebooks show up, and the marginal cost of one more copy is 0, when the Kindle or other reading devices let the store, thus the publisher, know who's reading what, suddenly the only thing that's scarce is attention, right? That we don't have scarce shelf space. There's infinite shelf space on an online bookstore. We don't have scarce paper. There's unlimited paper in an electronic bookstore. So that what's going to happen? It's already happening. When I started in the book business 25 years ago, they were publishing 50 to 70,000 books a year in the United States. Last year, it was 150,000 books, and this year it's going to be 1 million, right? The same hockey stick curve you've all seen before. So there's going to be 1 million books this year and 10 million books next year published. The question is, what chance do you have to win when you're acting like it's scarce? Good news, here's a free book. Well, I don't need a free book from you. There's 10 million other books for me to choose from. What I need is another hour to even decide which book I'm going to finish. And so what we tried to do with the Domino project to say, if we threw out all the precepts of the old days and looked at the new assets that are available, how many mistakes could we possibly make? How many different things could we do wrong? And discover the few things that would work in this space, and then open the door to let other people copy what we did. So we did a dozen books. We're done doing new books. It was a project, not a life. And we did a dozen books, and every one was a bestseller for a different reason. General Electric sponsored one of the books we did so that we could give it away for free, for example. Yet another example of Thomas Edison sticking his nose into my business. And so what happens when a big company that wants attention from smart people says, all right, we'll trade you a bunch of money to the author, and now for incremental cost of 0, you can give a copy to everybody. And we sold, in parentheses, where we were trading for attention, not money, 100,000 copies of a book in 5 days for an author who had never sold more than 25,000 copies of a book in his whole life. And so now 100,000 people know about Steve Pressfield, and many of those people turn around and buy the souvenir edition, the paper edition, the older book he does. And suddenly you're taking attention and understanding how scarce it is and treating it that way. So let me just make sure I'm not going to use up all of my time here. And so the notion that I want to plant, the seed I want to plant is this. It's very easy to say, I built this great thing. I have this great factory. We need more attention. It's very easy to say to the marketing people, look, the assembly line is moving. Tell everybody about what we made. And then you have to understand, if you're doing that, you're acting like an industrialist. That the reason that Mad Men exists, the reason that you've heard of ad agencies, the reason that the Super Bowl exists is because industrialists needed a way to interrupt people. The reason there's trade magazines, the reason there's trade shows, is that industrialists needed a way to reach business-to-business buyers. Okay, I get that. But you as inventors have to understand that what you're asking the marketing people to do is bring you something really precious that you don't really want to pay for. And the alternative in a world where attention is so scarce is to build into the invention itself the nature of its spread, the nature of why it will be remarkable, why it will be talked about. Not that you have to buy your way to people tweeting about you or Facebooking about you or having a meeting at a trade show about you, but that built into the very thing you made is the element of its spread, is the thing that will earn you, not take for you, but earn you the attention that you deserve, so this thing you built, this thing you invented, becomes a protocol, becomes a method of connecting. Because as much as I hate to say it, the future belongs to the Alexander Graham Bells, not the Thomas Edisons of the world. that what we have discovered is that the power of connection completely overwhelms the power of being an industrialist in this century. So we left plenty of time for Sarah and I to talk, and then we might even be able to take your questions. But thank you for the work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Seth. Absolutely true that Edison was an industrialist. But Edison also discovered new things. And in that era, that was part of the mode that propelled his name all over the world.
Correct.
So today, people are discovering, and Steve just talked about this, things that work faster, move faster. We saw a demonstration of an individual who was paralyzed for 20 years and now is able to walk. So there is this notion of discovery, and then how do we deliver that? So social innovation, social impact through social media is part of today how we do that. I think if Edison had had that vehicle in his lifetime, he would have used it.
Sure.
But the discovery aspect of what we do, I don't think goes away.
If it sounds like I'm saying everything that could be invented has been invented, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the magical things that we saw some of the people demonstrate today, I'm thrilled that they're going on. But if you read Fred Wilson's blog post today, he's pointing out that VCs, the people who are investing, that organizations are suddenly saying, wait, if we get it right in the connection front, the return is so much faster. So there's this shift. I'm not saying we don't need unbelievable solar panels and wheelchairs that walk upstairs and everything else. We do. But the glory days of being able to completely redefine the laws of physics and the way we work in the world with molecules, it's much harder to pull that off than it used to be.
Agree. I think that what we've heard some of today is that you need to have more of a multidisciplinary team as you're going through discovery. It isn't just someone who knows one thing very deeply.
Yes.
It's also about getting many people who know several things. Design thinking we heard about today. And so this notion of getting many minds to work together is also part of that. So could you comment on that as well?
Right. So you've been reading about Bell Labs and the way that worked during the glory days, that they intentionally set it up that you had to walk past other people's offices, that these accidental collisions add so much value. Most of the productivity of the internet is completely untapped now. We didn't build the internet so you could watch Justin Bieber videos. That it was invented to help scientists collaborate. And so far, it's mostly used so that scientists can avoid the hard work and tweet instead, right? And over time, though, this openness leads to more of the collaboration that matters. And we're going to see Silicon Valley become less important because it doesn't matter that you're on Route 101, right? What matters is that you are part of a tribe of people who are on the same path. And the better we get at being open about this, the more likely it is we'll make innovations. If you're trying to be closed about it, worried whose name is going to be on the patent application, you can't do that, right?
Well, and some of that, I think, comes to how complex are the issues that you're addressing? I mean, we've talked about the medical world and, looking at cancer and cures for very complicated chronic illnesses.
Right.
Many other complex issues that we're grappling with.
Correct.
So some of that can happen out through the network. And as Edison, demonstrated to us through Menlo Park and the West Orange Laboratory, it's also about getting some specialists together.
Right.
So it seems to me almost a combination of this realm of being specialized and having a cluster of people working on something, and then also opening that out in some fashion.
Right. No disagreement. I'm just, I want you to remember just one thing from at least my part of today. It's this: make sure you're fighting the right fight. And what I'm saying is all the tides, all the wind is at your back if you're moving in the direction of enabling the community to get smarter, enabling the community to get more connected. If you find yourself swimming upstream and trying to be more private and more alone and more heroic, you probably are going to end up behind the people who are doing it the other way.
Just one other thought, and then we can open up for one or two questions. Edison was great at taking initiative. And I know in Poke the Box you talk about initiative as a form of capital. How can you actually get people to take initiative and step forward with the idea that they have, with the discovery that they think they've come up with? So Edison was masterful at this, and he also encouraged his people to take initiative. He taught them how to experiment. I don't know that this is something that we see today. I don't know that we so much encourage the people that work with us to take initiative. Just a comment on that.
I love that point. You know, this device in your pocket or this device on your laptop is a connection to the whole world. So we've basically said to you, do you want to be an impresario? Do you want to put on a show? Tesla was brilliant at this. Do you want to say, I am going to send the invitation to the 8 people who need to be in the room, or are you going to wait to be invited? And this notion that you can take this initiative, because it's never given. If you work in a big company, these notions of authority and responsibility are fascinating. Because if you take responsibility and are willing to give credit, you will discover that authority just shows up and it's given to you. On the other hand, if you demand authority and refuse to take responsibility, you're just going to whine all day long.
Right.
So I wrote that whole book just so you would say people need to take initiative, because that is Edison's biggest legacy.
Because it really is about anticipating and adapting rather than waiting and responding.
That's correct.
So let's just take 1 or 2 questions. If anyone has something they might like to ask Seth. Anyone here? Yes, please, Gail.
Hi.
Tip it up if you would just a bit so that we can hear you.
Because I'm tall. I'm Gail Carr.
Hi, Gail.
Seth, I was struck by your comment that Alexander Graham Bell kind of won because he enabled communication. And recently I read an article about Reid Hoffman, who
Sure, I was with Reid the other day, yeah.
LinkedIn. And in the article, he was going through 3 or 4 principles. And he said, always build the methods for communication into whatever it is you're building so that you can spread. Now, thinking about some of our innovations here today, and they are kind of standalone, and I'm a B2B person. I'm wondering about taking an example of a more standalone product or service
Sure.
and speculating about how you could build communication and
Right. So I'll do a couple right off the top of my head. All right.
Okay.
First, when I was talking about Bell, the people he won against were all the other guys who were hawking telephones at the time, because lots of people were trying to win that battle.
Okay.
He and the guy whose name I just forgot, who became the chairman of AT&T for all those years, they decided to fight the protocol war, which is why they won. Now, I don't know anything about Tabula, the chip we just saw that blew my socks off, right? And I have good socks. But
oh, nice.
if I were trying to get that product adopted, I would open as much of the coding as I could to a community of 1,000 other people who are with competitive companies or otherwise. Because if there's no software, no one's going to use the chip.
So
if
like
there's lots and lots of people who are
hackathon
connected.
type thing.
Source, yeah.
Sorry?
Like a hackathon, so someone
Not
can
even just
actually
an
work.
event, just in general. Here, it's open. Go run with this. That what we see is that when you make a programming language something that people devote their lives to, it becomes more standard. When it becomes more standard, the chip that runs it is more likely to succeed, right? Whereas if you make it a closed shop and you say to Samsung or RCA, and I'm making all this up, so if I'm wrong, I apologize, right? Then it's much harder to make that B2B sale because you haven't created a platform, a carnival, a place. What you've done is created this closed thing that someone needs to buy. So that's one example. We saw that wonderful device for people who are physically handicapped. Well, I'm saying if you could figure out a way to license the core technology to 50 or 100 other companies that would then compete with you and get better and better at making it work, you're much more likely to have this new protocol for how the physically disabled work than if you're saying, no, we're the only people who are allowed to make this thing, take it or leave it. And in the B2B world, that's what we see over and over again, is that organizations are looking for platforms. They're not looking for that untested thing that they have to buy or not buy.
Thanks so much, Gail.
As a former IBMer, I understand that. That's how we start.
Let's take one more question. Yes, please. Would you mind standing, if you would?
John Keane with PGI.
Hi, John.
I understand the model. Often it's very difficult to take that model and monetize it. It's easy to get stuff away for free. I get a base of 300, 600 million, 1 billion people. Then trying to take that and provide a monetary value and convert that free to a paid. And then you get this inflated market cap. Okay, you've got 600 million people. Your company's worth $20 billion, $bajillion. When you're driving $1 billion in revenue. How do you justify that?
Okay, so it's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. First of all, it's really hard to give something away for free. It's just easier than it is to sell it sometimes. But giving something away for free isn't as easy as you say. Number two is, I have never met a person who said to me, too many people know my idea, I can't make any money. I've never met a person who said, my company is used by too many people, we can't figure out how to make any money. That what these market valuations are based on, and sometimes the CEOs, et cetera, screw it up, is attention is the precious resource, right? So there's no author who says too many people have read my book, or I've been on Oprah too many times, I can't make a living. There's no web service where they say too many people are using our web service, like Instagram, 0 revenue. Like, I run a web company with revenue. I'm jealous that they sold Instagram for a lot of money because he doesn't have any revenue at all. But you know what he has? He has 500 million people who would miss him if he was gone, right? Or 50 million, whatever the number is. And I have fewer people who would miss me if my company was gone. And this notion of being missed, of having people dependent on your day, you will figure out how to turn attention into money. Everyone figures it out at some level. The way you'll earn your market share is if you figure it out well. Yahoo figured it out for a long time, and then they lost the touch and someone else figured it out. But once you are in the position that you have attention to leverage, making money is never the challenge.
And I think one of the points there, too, is what is the value that you're bringing and how is it relevant? Part of what I think Edison was brilliant at doing was taking what he invented and making it relevant. This is part of what I think we grapple with today, whether we're in the innovation age or the industrial age. So this has been a tremendous discussion. I so appreciate all your time. And thank you for being with us at the Edison Awards, Seth.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work, guys. Thank you.
Oh, we have to do a picture, Seth.